The vibration against my thigh wasn't just a mechanical buzz. It felt like a premonition of physical jolt that stopped my heart cold in the middle of fastening the clasp of my vintage sapphire brooch. It was the brooch my late husband Thomas had bought me for our 30th anniversary, a piece of jewelry I saved strictly for moments of immense joy. Today was supposed to be one of those days. I was 72 years old, standing in the sun-drenched hallway of the home I had scrubbed clean since dawn, wearing the navy silk dress that Lucas, my only son, had once said made me look elegant. The smell of warm blueberry crumble, my grandchildren's absolute favorite, was drifting from the kitchen, sweet and inviting. But when I looked at the screen of my phone, the sweetness in the air turned instantly sour. It was Arthur Pendleton, my accountant of 20 years, a man who never called on weekends. The text was short, brutal, and terrifying in its urgency. Eleanor, call me immediately. Do not get in the car. Do not go to Lucas's house. This is an emergency. My hands, usually steady enough to thread a needle, began to shake so violently that the phone clattered onto the hardwood floor. I stared at it as if it were a venomous snake. The clock on the wall ticked, loudly marking the minutes until I was supposed to leave for the drive into the city, for the family lunch I had been looking forward to for weeks. I picked up the phone and dialed Arthur, my breath hitting in my throat. He answered before the first ring could even finish. Eleanor, listen to me very carefully, Arthur said, his voice stripped of its usual warm professional cadence. You need to sit down. What I am about to tell you is going to shatter you, but it is better that you break now in the safety of your own home than be destroyed later today at that table I sank onto the bench by the front door, the wood hard and unforgiving against my back. Arthur took a deep breath that rattled through the receiver. 3 days ago, Lucas came to my firm. He didn't know I was the senior partner handling your accounts, because we've always kept our business relationship discreet. He met with a junior associate to draft a series of documents. Eleanor, he has prepared a total transfer of assets. He has a power of attorney drafted that claims you are suffering from early onset dementia and can no longer manage your affairs. He has the deed to your house ready to be signed over to him for a nominal fee of $10, and he has the authorization forms to liquidate your retirement accounts. The silence in my hallway was deafening. It was a silence that swallowed the ticking clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the sound of my own heartbeat. Dementia. I whispered the word, tasting like ash. I just completed the Sunday crossword in ink. Arthur, I know. Eleanor, I know. But the papers are already drawn up. Lucas and his wife Sarah intend to have you sign them today. They are going to frame it as estate planning, something to save on taxes, something to protect the grandchildren. They have a notary coming to the lunch if you go there today, if you drink their wine, and sign those papers. By Monday morning you will be homeless and penniless, the world tilted on its axis. I looked around my foyer. I saw the framed photographs of Lucas as a boy, his toothless grin at age 6, his graduation photo, where he looked so proud, the picture of him holding his firstborn son. I had starved for that boy. When Thomas died 15 years ago, leaving me with a mortgage and a broken heart, I had worked double shifts at the library and took in sewing commissions just to make sure Lucas finished his MBA without debt. I had sold Thomas's collection of rare coins. I had skipped vacations, skipped meals, skipped life, all to pour every ounce of my resources into him. And now he wasn't just asking for help. He was orchestrating my erasure. He was planning to declare me incompetent to steal the modest life I had built from the ashes of my widowhood. Arthur continued, his voice gentle, now trembling with a suppressed rage. I have the drafts, Eleanor. I intervened before they could be finalized. But Lucas believes they are ready, he thinks. He is walking into a victory today. Do not go. Come to my office tomorrow morning. We will lock everything down. But for today, stay home, lock your door. I hung up the phone and sat there for what felt like an eternity. The blueberry crumble was cooling in the kitchen. The gift bags for the twins, filled with hand-wear-upon sweaters, sat by the door. I was dressed in silk and sapphires, ready to play the role of the beloved matriarch, while my son was preparing to play the role of executioner. I stood up, my knees creaking, and walked to the mirror. The woman staring back didn't look senile. She looked tired. She looked betrayed. She looked like a fool. How had I not seen this coming? Or had I seen it and chosen to look away? The signs had been there, scattered like breadcrumbs in a dark forest, the way Sarah would roll her eyes when I told a story, the way Lucas never called unless he needed something. The loans that were never repaid. Just last month I had written him a check for $6, zero, because he said the roof of their garage was leaking. I had driven by their house a week later. The roof was untouched, but there was a brand new jet ski in the driveway. I hadn't said a word. I had convinced myself that perhaps the repair was internal, or that he deserved a treat. I was a mother, and mothers are experts at blinding themselves to the faults of their children. The phone rang again. It was Lucas. I stared at his name on the screen, a name I had chosen with such love, a name I had whispered to him when he was a feverish baby in my arms. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. I couldn't speak to him if I heard his voice, that charming, manipulative voice that he used to get whatever he wanted. I might vomit. The ringing stopped and a text message appeared instantly. Mom, where are you? The kids are waiting. Sarah made your favorite roast. Don't be late. Lies. It was all lies. The roast, the excitement of the children, the concern, it was all bait for the trap. I walked into the kitchen and looked looked at the crumble, I picked up the heavy ceramic dish, and with a sudden surge of violent energy, I dumped the entire dessert into the trash can. The beautiful purple filling smeared against the plastic liner a ruined labor. Of love, I wasn't going to feed them. I wasn't going to nourish the people who wanted to devour me. I went to my bedroom, took off the silk dress, and unpinned the sapphire brooch. I placed the jewelry back in its velvet box, closing the lid with a snap that sounded like a gunshot. I put on my gardening trousers and an old wool sweater. I sat in my armchair by the window as the afternoon light faded into the gray of evening, watching the street, half expecting a police car or Lucas's SUV to pull up and drag me away to a facility. But no one came. They were probably calling each other, frantic, wondering why the sheep hadn't wandered into the slaughterhouse by nightfall. I had received 20 calls and 30 text messages. "Mom, are you okay, Mom? We're worried, Mom. If you don't answer, we're coming over." I finally typed a single response, my fingers cold against the screen. "I am not feeling well. A stomach bug. I am turning off my phone to sleep. Do not come over. I am contagious." It was a week lie, but it bought me time. I sat in the dark house, the shadows lengthening around me, and I mourned. I didn't mourn the money they tried to steal. I mourned the death of the sun. I thought I had that Lucas was gone, replaced by a stranger with cold eyes and a calculator for a heart. The next morning, Monday, the sky was the color of a bruised plum. I drove into downtown Chicago, navigating the heavy traffic with a stoic determination. I parked near Arthur's office building and took the elevator to the 42nd floor. Arthur was waiting for me, looking exhausted, as if he hadn't slept either. He led me into a conference room and laid the documents out on the mahogany table. Seeing them in black and white was different from hearing about them. It made the betrayal physical. I read the power of attorney. It was comprehensive. It gave Lucas the right to sell my home access, my medical records, and place me in a long-term care facility of his choosing. A nursing home he was going to put me. Away, I read the deed transfer for love and affection and other valuable consideration. It said love and affection, the legal language of theft. "He has been planning this for months," Arthur said softly, pushing a second stack of papers toward me. I did some digging, Eleanor. It gets worse. I looked up, my eyes dry and burning. "How can it be worse than this?" Arthur sighed. "Lucas and Sarah are in debt, significant debt. They owe nearly $80, zero on credit cards, and they are behind on their own mortgage. But that's not the worst part. 2 months ago, they applied for a business loan. They listed your house as collateral." I gasped. "But the house is in my name." "Exactly," Arthur said. "They forged your signature on the application. The bank caught the discrepancy in the title search and denied the loan. but they didn't prosecute because banks rarely do without a victim complaint. Lucas and Sarah didn't just want your assets for the future. They needed them now to cover their own failures. If you had signed these papers yesterday, they would have mortgaged your home by Tuesday afternoon to pay off their gambling debts. Gambling debts, the jet ski, the vacations, the designer clothes Sarah wore. It was all funded by a house of cards, and I was the foundation. They intended to crush to keep it standing. What do I do, Arthur? I asked, my voice trembling. Do I go to the police? Arthur looked at me with deep sympathy. You can. This is fraud attempted, grand larceny, and elder abuse. You have enough here to put them in prison for years. But I know you, Eleanor. I know that sending your only child to prison is a lie. Most mothers cannot cross, even mothers who have been grievously wronged. He was right. The thought of Lucas in a cell despite everything made my stomach turn. It was a biological weakness, a flaw in the maternal code. If you don't want to prosecute, Arthur continued, then we must protect you so thoroughly that they can never touch a single dime. We will put your assets in an irrevocable trust. We will alert every bank in the state. We will change your will. Do it, I said, my voice hardening. Do it all. And Arthur, I want to draft a new will today. I want to leave everything to the Chicago Public Library Foundation. Arthur smiled for the first time. An excellent choice. We spent the next 4 hours building a fortress around my life. I signed document after document, each signature a brick in the wall between me and my family. By the time I left his office, I was legally untouchable, but emotionally I was. An open wound, I walked out onto Michigan Avenue, the wind whipping off the lake, stinging my cheeks. I saw mothers pushing strollers, adjusting blankets, kissing small foreheads. I wanted to scream at them. I wanted to warn them. Don't love them too much. I wanted to yell, don't give them everything, or they will grow up to take the rest. But I stayed silent. I drove home, the silence of the car amplifying my thoughts. I knew what I had to do next. I couldn't just ghost them. I couldn't let them think I was simply sick or confused. I needed them to know that I knew. I needed to see their faces. When the mask fell, I waited until Wednesday. The delay was strategic. It let their anxiety build. I sent a text to Lucas. I am feeling better. Come over on Saturday at 2 p.m. Just you. I have something important to discuss regarding the estate. He replied instantly, great Mom. Can Sarah come? No, I wrote back, just you. I spent the rest of the week preparing. I didn't clean the house this time. I didn't bake. I didn't arrange flowers. I left the dust motes dancing in the light. I wanted the house to look as cold as I felt. I gathered all the evidence, the bank statements showing the unpaid loans, the forged loan application Arthur had obtained, and the unsigned drafts of the theft he had planned. I placed them in 3 neat piles on the coffee table. Saturday arrived with a gray drizzle. At 2 p.m. sharp, Lucas's car pulled into the driveway. I watched from the window as he checked his reflection. In the rear-view mirror, smoothing his hair, he looked confident. He probably thought I was finally going to hand over the checkbook. That my estate discussion was me volunteering to be robbed. He unlocked the door with his key, a key I realized I would have to take back, and walked in. Mom, he called out, his voice falsely cheerful, in the living room. I said. He walked in, smiling, that dazzling smile that used to melt my heart. Hey, you look good. Sarah sends her love. She's really sorry she couldn't make it. I told you not to bring her, I said, not standing up from my chair. Lucas faltered, sensing the change in the atmosphere. He looked at the coffee table, at the piles of paper. What's all this? Are we doing taxes? I pointed to the chair opposite. Me sit down, Lucas. He sat, his smile wavering. But holding, you're acting so serious. Is everything okay? I picked up the first document, the forged loan application. Do you recognize this? I asked. He leaned forward, squinting, and then he froze. The color drained from his face so fast it was like a light switch had been flipped. I don't know what that is, he stammered. Don't lie to me, I said, my voice quiet and steady. It's a loan application from First City Bank. It lists my home as collateral, and at the bottom there is a signature that looks like mine, but we both know I didn't sign it. That is a felony, Lucas, bank fraud. He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. I picked up the second pile, and these the power of attorney declaring me incompetent, the deed transfer for $10. Arthur showed me everything, the dementia diagnosis. You invented the plan to put me in a home. Lucas slumped back in the chair, looking suddenly very young and very small. Mom, you don't understand, he began, his voice cracking. We were desperate. The debt, it got out of control. Sarah's business failed, and we tried to cover it with credit cards, and then the interest rates hiked up. We were drowning. So you decided to use me as a life raft. I asked. You decided to drown me to save yourselves. We weren't going to drown you, he cried, tears welling in his eyes. We were going to take care of you. We just needed control of the assets to leverage the equity. We would have paid it back. I swear you have never paid me back, I said, slamming my hand on the table. The 6,000 for the roof, the 4,000 for the car transmission, the money for the kids' private school you took, and I gave because I loved you. But this declaring me insane, forging my name, this isn't asking for help, Lucas. This is predation. He put his head in his hands and sobbed. It was a pitiful sound, but it didn't move me. It was the sound of a man caught, not a man sorry. Who are you? I asked, looking at the top of his head. I raised a boy who returned a lost wallet to the grocery store. I raised a boy who cried when a bird died. Where did he go? He looked up, his face blotchy. I'm still him, Mom. I'm just scared. Please, if you report this, I'll lose my license. I'll go to jail. The kids, I repeated bitterly. You didn't think about the kids when you committed a felony. You didn't think about the kids. When you tried to make their grandmother homeless, don't use them as a shield now. I took a deep breath. I have instructed Arthur not to file criminal charges, yet Lucas let out a breath, his shoulders sagging in relief. Thank you, Mom, thank you. I knew you. I am not finished. I cut him off. I am not sending you to prison because I refuse to be the mother of a convict. But you are no longer my beneficiary. The will has been changed. The house is in a trust. You will never ever be able to access my money again. And the key. I held out my hand. Give me my house key. He looked at my hand, stunned. Mom, you're kicking me out. I'm your son. You are a stranger who tried to rob me. I said family is based on trust, Lucas. You broke it. It is gone. I cannot sleep in this house. Knowing you have a key, give it to me slowly. With trembling fingers, he reached into his pocket, unhooked the key from his ring, and placed it in my palm. The metal was warm from his body. Go, I said, and tell Sarah that if she ever steps foot on my property again, I will reconsider my stance on pressing charges. Mom, please, he whispered. When can I see you? I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe never, maybe in 10 years, but not now. I need to heal from the knife you put in my back. He stood up, looking around the living room as if seeing it for the last time. He walked to the door, paused, and looked back. I loved you, you know, he said. I still do know, Lucas. I said sadly. You loved what I could do for you. Goodbye. He walked out, and the door clicked shut. I locked the deadbolt. I slid the chain into place, and then finally I collapsed onto the floor and wailed. I cried until my throat was raw, mourning the living death of my relationship with my son. The weeks that followed were a blur of gray. The silence in the house was heavy, but it was also safe. I didn't have to wonder if the phone call was a request for money. I didn't have to decipher lies. I began to attend a support group for victims of financial abuse recommended by Arthur. I walked into the church basement that first Tuesday night, ashamed, feeling like the only mother stupid enough to let this happen. But the room was full. There were 20 other people there, men and women, some older than me, some younger. I listened to their stories. A man whose daughter had drained his 401k. I realized I wasn't stupid. I was just a victim of love. I met a woman named Margaret. There she was, petite with sharp eyes and a wit that made me laugh for the first time in months. We went for coffee. After the meeting, my daughter Margaret said, stirring her cappuccino, convinced me to co-sign a loan for a restaurant. It never opened. She took the money to Vegas. She looked at me. It hurts, Eleanor. It feels like an amputation. But you survive it. Margaret became my lifeline. We started meeting for lunch. Then we started taking painting classes together at the community center. I discovered I had a knack for watercolors. I painted landscapes, stormy seas, tranquil forests, places Where no one could hurt me through Margaret, I met Beatrice, my neighbor 3 doors down, whom I had only ever waved to. Beatrice was a retired nurse with a passion for gardening. She saw me struggling with my rose bushes one day and came over with her own shears. "You're pruning them too gently," she told me. "You have to cut the dead wood aggressively if you want them to bloom." I looked at her, understanding the double meaning. "Yes," I said, "I suppose you do, Beatrice." Margaret and I formed a trio. We called ourselves the Survivors Club, though we laughed about how dramatic it sounded. We spent holidays together. Thanksgiving was no longer a stressful marathon of cooking for ungrateful guests. It was a potluck with wine and laughter and stories about our youth. I learned that blood connects you to relatives, but loyalty connects you to family. One afternoon, 6 months after the confrontation, I was in the grocery store when I saw Sarah. She was in the produce aisle, looking haggard, her roots showing. She saw me and froze for a moment. I felt that old tug of obligation, the urge to ask how the grandchildren were to offer help. But then I remembered the documents. I remembered the dementia claim. I remembered the love and affection clause. I straightened my spine. I didn't run away. I didn't hide. I simply looked her in the eye, gave a curt nod of acknowledgement, and turned my cart toward the bakery section. I bought myself a blueberry muffin. I walked out into the sunshine, feeling lighter than I had in years. I never heard from Lucas again except for a formal letter from a lawyer acknowledging the revocation of his rights to my estate. It was cold, legal, and perfect. I missed my grandchildren, of course. That was the price. I paid the collateral damage of his greed, but I started volunteering at the library, reading to children during story hour. I poured my love into those strangers, into the community, into my friends. I realized that my capacity to love hadn't been destroyed. It just needed a new vessel. One evening, sitting on my porch with Beatrice and Margaret, watching the fireflies dance in the twilight, Beatrice asked me, "Do you ever wish you had just signed the papers just to keep the peace?" I looked at my house, safe and mine. I looked at my friends, genuine and kind. I felt the peace in my heart, a peace that was hard-won and solid as rock. "No," I said softly, "the peace I have now is real. The peace I had before was just a pause between lies." I took a sip of my tea. I learned the hard way that you cannot buy love, and you certainly shouldn't have to pay for it with your dignity. Being alone is not the same as being lonely. I like the woman I am now. She's strong. She's pruning the dead wood. And as the stars came out over Chicago, I knew I was going to be all right. I had lost a son, but I had found myself, and that was a trade I was finally willing to accept.